Hello, everybody. Welcome to class number 2 of 4 for our Stitchy Fun Halloween portrait. And before we get going, I have to say Happy Stitch People Day. It just so happened that our second class of this series landed on our annual Stitch People Day. So if you don't follow us on social media or anything yet, you really should. Today is the day. We're running a store discount. We're doing games in our Instagram stories with giveaways. It's just one day of the year that we've chosen, happens to be the end of September, has been for the last few years, where we celebrate our Stitch People community by giving away a lot of free stuff and making a lot of really fun announcements and releasing a lot of new things. This year is definitely more on the announcement heavy. Last year was a little more on the release heavy. You never know what Stitch People Day will bring. But I see some familiar faces. I noticed Susan's here and Carla. Hello. I'm sure there are other Stitch people in the crew here today. Thank you for coming to hang out. It's always a fun time. I'm Lizzie Bean. I've got Spencer, my hubby and business partner here. He's running chat. So if you have any questions, please absolutely ask them. We love an active chat. Tell us about yourselves. I saw some people introducing themselves and where they're from. We love to see it. It's so much fun. So ask questions. Spencer will feed them to me and I'll answer them in due course as we're going along today. But I'm going to switch my view here and show you my overhead view. I've got my nice little layout of all the things. So here I have our finished example of what we will be stitching. And here I have ours in progress. As I mentioned last Hello, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me in the headphones? That was weird. Zoom just disappeared on my screen. I don't know what's going on.
Did it disappear for everybody else?
Yeah, I don't know if it disappeared for you. Probably.
Okay.
If not, you would have seen me here just stunned, like blink, blink, blink. But it just launched right up again. So that's great. Okay. Anywho'sville, what I was saying is we do cross-stitched family portraits. So the reason I bring that up, and I mentioned this last week, but I'm never going to stop talking about it, is we are all about your own personal creativity. So that's why I'm showing you different fabric options. Is anybody stitching this on a midnight blue fabric? Is anybody stitching this on a dark black fabric, making it extra spooky? Love that for you. If you have a particular witch that is your favorite from a story, from a movie, you could create a little fan portrait here and switch up the witchy colors. If you want platinum blonde witch hair today, you can absolutely do that. I want to totally encourage you to make your own custom choices and really make this your own. I'm sticking to sort of traditional things here, green witch face, gray hair, kind of the old hag kind of look like you might get in Wizard of Oz or something like that. You could do black hair. I'm just saying you can do whatever you want. That's what we're about with Stitch People, our book, Do It Yourself. We're all about do it yourself, mix and match, customizing it, making it your own. We only have one life to live. Why be afraid of customizing cross-stitch patterns? You know what I'm saying? So without further ado, let's jump into stitching our witch. Which witch? This witch. I have some flossies prepared. Please forgive, I've been doing yard work and I got bit by a weed. So that's all that is. I have our little cheat sheet here. If you haven't started stitching yet, deciding between size 11 and size 14 AIDA, hopefully you can see those notes and you can read about how big everything is going to be. I just thought I'd put that there for reference. But I've got my my witch stitched. This is going to be a tongue twister day, I can already tell. And as per the pattern, oh, Spencer's helping out. As per the pattern, I stitched the witch's green skin. I stitched the witch's black hat. I stitched the witch's cloak, but as you can see, I did not do the eyes and I'm missing a couple black hat stitches. As I was going along this morning, getting ready for class, I thought, I'm going to leave those undone so that I can show you what to do about these crazy diagonal stitches that I put in a lot of patterns that a lot of people shake their fist at me about. I get it, I know. But like I mentioned, we're all about custom cross stitch. And when I'm doing a pattern and I don't have a stitch that will work for my purposes, I invent one. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm first going to start with the tip of this hat. This is 2 side by side, parallel, back to back, however you want to call it, diagonal stitches. And I tend to call these like a 2-to-1 stitch. Whoops. 2-to-1 stitch, because they're both, if we start at a corner, they're both over 1, up 2. Over 1 from the center, up 2, as opposed to just a 45-degree angle stitch that you do twice for every cross stitch you make, right? So what I'm going to do is bring my needle up from the back through my fabric. And I'm going to just create this diagonal shape with a straight stitch. I'm going to leave a tail, like I mentioned in last week's class. I don't like to knot because I like the back to be smooth, because then depending on how I'm going to frame it, it'll come in real handy. I'll show you this view. You can see there's no real chunks going on. I just have this magnet for my needle minder and the tail. So I'm going to hold the tail with my left hand, and I'm going to complete this diagonal stitch. So I'm going to go over 1 and up 2. Bam. There we go. And you could call it done there, but I'll show you the reason I'm showing you this particular part of things. I'll do the diagonal on the other side here. Absolutely. Oh yes, I need to go out. I see. Spencer's making it happen, folks. Okay, so as I bring my needle through the back, I'm going to catch this tail. Come on. I'm getting a little frayed here. There we go. I'm going to catch the tail with the loop.
Are you scared by the witch?
Oh no, yes, I'm very nervous stitching this witch. It's very scary. Halloween witch. Just kidding. Okay, so there, I've done my diagonal, but you might see there's like a hole in the hat right now. And so there's a couple of different things you can do to fix that. Since this is just 2 back-to-back stitches, I'm going to create one more stitch that goes straight up the middle between them to fill it out. And you might think like, wahoo, I'm done. Well, now I just have 2 holes. And so what I like to do, kind of no matter what, for these 2-to-1 ratio stitches, which I did all along the hat elsewhere, is I will bring my needle up. I'm going to just show you here on the grid. So every 2-to-1 ratio stitch is 2 squares, right? So we have 2 full squares of space that we're working with, and we're creating a diagonal between them. So I literally will have a stitch like this. And what I like to do is utilize the second hole that I have. So I go here to here, and then I'll go into this second hole on the long edge and just do a little quarter stitch like this. I don't know if that's technically a quarter stitch or half stitch, but that's what I do. And I poke my needle right through the AIDA fabric between these 2 holes. Okay, so I just drew it because that's a little clearer. It might be a little tricky to see on my thing, on my actual project. I'm dipping my needle to sort of go under that straight stitch that I did up the middle. I don't want to come through those threads. That's just personal preference. And I poke my needle between the holes of the AIDA fabric, and there we have it. Same thing again. I'm going to bring my needle up through the hole on that long edge that you might not think to utilize because it's like not part of the triangle. Oh, but it is. And I'm going to bring my needle in at an angle to avoid that straight stitch, so it'll lay underneath. If I were doing this just on my own, I would have done these little quarter stitches first and then finished with that stitch down the middle, but I wanted to do it the other way around so you could see the logic of why I do these little filler stitches. And then it's totally filled in. How cool is that? Similarly, we've got a, oh, I'm so sorry, 3-to-1 ratio stitch here on either side of the hat, but it's basically the same thing. So I'm going to bring my needle up on the corner. I'm going to complete this long edge, and you'll see it'll leave a really unsightly gap. Ew. What I'm going to do now is utilize these. I now have 2 holes I can work with. I'm going to go up 1 hole on the long edge. Yeah, good call, Spence. Thank you. And I'm going to go in between the holes of the AIDA fabric. Does that fill it in? Not enough for my liking. I'm going to do it again on the second hole along the long edge and just double up on that hole that I stabbed between the holes of the AIDA fabric. Ha! Now we have a totally gorgeous totally filled in hat. Now, if you want to, because these diagonals tend to be a little bit smoother looking, you could top off just because in the pattern, it looks really smooth because they're all filled in black squares, right? But when you actually cross stitch, you have sort of a little gap right at the top, which you don't notice when it's all cross stitching, but when you have long diagonals side by side to the cross stitching, you might not like it. So you could go over top the cross stitches like this. And I'm just going to double back and do the other side so you can see what it looks like. To just kind of smooth things out. Oh, it's 2 stitches. That's why I was like, wait, where's the hole? So I'm going to do 1. I'm going to go back and do 2. Or you could just do 1 long straight stitch that's too wide. I only did 1 over here, so I'm making a mess on the back here. I'm doubling back and forth in very uncouth ways. But there we go. See, I've kind of smoothed out the look of that hat. And I could go along the edges around the hat and do that as well. But for time today, I'm going to move along to the eyes. Now, the reason I didn't do the eyes is I thought if we had enough time today, I might show you an eye technique to make the eyes look a little more realistic. Some people don't love the look of the Stitch People eyes being just 2 black cross stitches. Some people think it looks like, cartoon dead, which is valid. So if you don't want that, I was like, oh, I'll show you that at the end if we have time. But then I couldn't stomach the idea of stitching this entire thing with like no eyes staring blankly at me. And so we're going to do those really quick. I'll show you the fun, cool, real eye technique at the top of class. So what I like to do for it, and you can use the threads that you have on hand. If you only have the colors listed in the pattern, that's okay. We'll make it work. If you have a little bit more of a collection, this cross stitch is giving me guff. Just want to make sure I come up cleanly through this hole and that I'm not stabbing through the threads of the AIDA fabric. Okay, perfect. My little X. Okay, so if you have a larger floss collection, feel free to choose an eye color. This is what I prefer for eyes. Somebody in the Stitch People community came up with this. Other people have done their own take on this. It's sort of grown and morphed, and it's a really good solution to adding color to eyes that isn't like totally alien. If you have light blue eyes in real life, for example, when you look at a photo, especially if you're standing at a distance, you don't really see the color of the eyes. But a lot of people love their eye color, and that's a really big part of their identity. So when you're making a personalized cross-stitch portrait, you want to include it. But if you just stitch 2 big X's with light blue, it looks really bizarre because nobody just has like big blue. It's like alien eyes. So what I suggest for the eyes is to complete the black X's. But again, some people don't like the dead look. And I have this strand of green floss that I've already cut that I'm going to use for the witch's eyebrows and the witch's wart. For those of you who are only using floss colors on hand, use 1 strand maybe of green. You could use a strand of gray. If you wanted to give her creepy red eyes, you could do that.
We have a great question from Roxanne. How do you feel about mixing floss brands within the design? So
that's really
you had
interesting.
1 color from one brand, 1 from another.
I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, preferably, I would definitely recommend DMC. They're kind of, I've been loyal to them since it was like official that I was loyal to them. Just because their selection is great and their quality has never failed me. But if you have a lot of kits, like if you buy a kit from a store, you go to Barnes & Noble, you get a little cross stitch kit off the shelf, they will often source their stuff from just manufacturers in China, and it's not even a brand, it's just random. That quality isn't always great, but sometimes you feel weird throwing that away. So you have it on hand. If you feel the sheen and the texture is consistent enough, or if it's inconsistent but that doesn't bother you, you do you. It's crafting. There's no right or wrong answer. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Alejandra said that she started using dark gray instead of black for the eyes.
Ooh, give it a little softer look.
Yep.
Love that suggestion, Alejandra. If you didn't hear what Spencer said, Alejandra mentioned using dark gray instead of black for the eyes. So what I've done while we've been chatting away about questions is I just found a nice light blue color, because I do think light blue is the most alien looking of the eyes. Like if this color was the only thing you saw in that eye hole, like it'd be like, especially with the green skin, no, thank you. What I'm going to do, since I'm making tiny little straight stitches, is I don't want to lose my floss. I don't want it to pull through. So I'm just going to run my floss through some of the stitching on the back side before I get going to secure it ahead of time. Oh, see, it already pulled through. When you use one strand, it tends to be a little bit more slippery, a little bit more delicate. So you don't want to lose it. I'm gonna even do a fourth go here. Okay, so we are pre-secured. So I have cross-stitched my 2 little black eyes. I'm now going to outline them. So you want to make sure when you're coming up from the back to the front that, okay, it's always funny teaching classes because I stitch at angles that I don't normally stitch at. Just want to make sure that's clean. And just do 4 little straight stitches around the eye. This is going to give the impression of an iris and a pupil. Thank you. It's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Pupil. We have a stitch person. She just got married. Her Instagram handle is iStitch, EYE Stitch. She's a ophthalmologist and a cross stitch person. And not only did she just get married, she stitched a custom portrait of her and her husband on for their wedding day, but she stitched 6 of them in 6 different outfits they had throughout the event, which was pretty dope. Big fan. Okay, so now I'm just going around here. I just think that's an interesting crossover. Eye doctor / cross stitcher. But I don't want to catch the threads. Okay, you're gonna lose my face for a minute. I just need to hover. Okay, so I'm gonna poke my needle here, kind of pre-open up that hole. There we go. Get it in there. I don't want this to take too long. It's just little straight stitches. The straight stitches can be deceptive. You think it's not going to be a big deal, and then sometimes it's hard to get them just right. The reason I like to outline after I've already done the X is so that the one little thread of floss kind of sits on top of the X. We do have Hillary Nestrick. She's a great stitcher, and she does a little bit of design help for us. She wrote a great blog on blog.stitchpeople.com about how to do sparkly eyes. And what she does is she actually outlines the eyes first before doing the cross stitch. She uses 2 strands of floss. That makes it a little thicker so that the color will show from underneath the black cross stitches. So there's a lot of personal preference that goes into how you like to tackle this.
Katie says that she uses 4 strands for eyes, no matter the size AIDA, because it just helps
fuller.
fill it in.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
if you're doing
Yep.
just like the solid black or the solid dark gray, solid eyes, 4 threads will
4 threads will fill it out. So I've outlined my eyes in 1 thread of blue. I'm now using my needle as a little bit of a tool, and I'm just pushing my blue stitches to the outer edge of the black. And you can see it softens the shape of the eye. It takes out that X shape, makes it a little more square. I'm just going to secure my floss on the back. That is casting off. Somebody asked that last week, like, how do you cast off? And we had already done it, and I felt bad I didn't circle back. Casting off is just running your remaining floss that you no longer need through some of the stitching on the back so that it is secured down and cutting it off. So anyway, I just thought this would be worth mentioning for those of you who are new to Stitch People, for those of you who've been involved with Stitch People but haven't really known how to do realistic looking eyes. This is one option. You can also double back with 1 thread of white and do little quarter stitches in the corner if you want to give it a little glisten. But for purposes of today, I am going to jump into Boolean stitches and French knots for the witch's curly hair. And I'm realizing that I am sporting wacky curly hair today. It's a little fuzzy. I didn't even mean to match my witch today. I pre-cut this. I just cut a length that's about from my fingertips to my bicep. That's a comfortable length for me personally. I have 3 strands of floss. You could use a little more for embroidery stitches if you want. I tend to just stick to 3 because that's what I use to cross stitch, and it keeps things consistent. But with big full hair, you could absolutely use 4, 5, or maybe even 6, but I would recommend splitting the threads even if you're using all 6 of them, just so that they're more likely to lay flat and not get twisted. Every time I say the word twisted, I think of Aladdin, the cartoon. If you know, you know. Okay, so I have my needle is threaded with 3 strands of floss. I'm using the gray 648 from the pattern. And just like my little blue eyes up here, I'm going to pre-secure this floss because I don't want to have to worry about any ends pulling through. That's just a headache that I don't want to deal with. So I'm just going to run my needle and thread, floss, what have you, through the back a couple of times, just to make sure it doesn't pull through. We're nice and secure. I'm going to start with French knots. So essentially when you're doing real hair techniques, there we go, around a Stitch People pattern, I always recommend, if you're making your own design or if you're working with a pre-done design like we are today, definitely envision the design with cross-stitched hair first. That will give you an idea of where it needs to lay. Sometimes if people are making their own portraits, think of this, you know, Dracula head. He's got a really short haircut. That's essentially the outline of just the head. Most people have hair, as you can see mine, my hair sits on top of my head by like a good couple inches. So if you don't plan for some of that volume for hair to go up and back or up and over, even when you have a hat on, you might end up with a really flat looking head. So just think of the cross stitch design first and let that be your guide. If you want to, you could even kind of draw it in on the back, give yourself a little guide, that would work. I'm just going to stick to referencing my pattern on the regs. And I'm going to start with French knots. I like to mix, especially if I'm doing like big, wild, curly hair, I like to mix French knots and Boolean knots. They both work really, really great for more realistic looking hair. If you have someone who has distinctive ringlets and like ringlets alone, I'd stick to just the Boolean stitches. And if you have someone, especially with shorter hair that's curly, you might want to stick to just French knots. But one of the reasons I'm going to start with French knots today is because A, a lot of people don't like them, but B, this is technically a beginner class. And if you are new to cross stitching, I would say next to the cross stitch, which we learned last week, and straight stitches, which we also talked about last week, and we'll talk about more in the future, I would say a French knot is the next best thing to know. It is the stitch by which you can accomplish dots, little circles. It's great in Stitch People portraits for details like a wart on the face or buttons on a shirt or a little diamond ring on a finger. In other contexts, I mean, think of snowflakes or little star sprinkles or just polka dots, anything that needs a tiny little dot at the scale of cross stitch, you're probably going to see French knots on patterns that you buy in the store or online. So I want to make sure you know how to do it. I will first show you, well, I've already pre-secured. I will first show you how to do kind of a traditional, straightforward French knot. I'm going to go just to the corner of the witch's hair. And this is where you get to just let go, give yourself permission that you've seen enough hairstyles in your life and you've worked with enough of this pattern to understand that anywhere that's gray on this pattern is where curls need to fill out. I have not specified where the Boolean stitches go, where the French knots go. We're just filling in this space with both, and trust your gut, you can do it. So you bring your needle up where the French knot needs to go. Easy peasy, that's pretty much how every stitch starts. How I like to do French knots is thusly. So yeah, Spencer's gonna get real tight because in the replay, this might get grainy. So I will try not to move. So as you can see in my right hand, down here in the bottom left corner of your screen, I'm holding the needle very tight with my right hand. What I like to do after pulling the floss through is take the floss with my left hand and hold it. And I will hold it the entire time until the very last second. I find for me personally, that's a game changer. Then I will take my needle in my right hand and I will twist it around my needle 2 times. And you wanna hold those twists pretty, I don't want to use the word tight because I don't want anyone to like yank it, but you also don't want it loose. We'll get into that in a second, but for a very straightforward traditional French knot, as you would see it in a pattern, this is what to do. So we've pulled it up. We're holding it with our left hand. We've now twisted it 2 times around our needle and it's somewhere, it's taut. That's the word. It's not tight. You're not really creating tension, but it also is pretty secure. You're not really going anywhere. Okay. Then you feed your needle back down through the fabric, but be careful not to use the exact same hole that you came up through because the knot might just pull through it. The holes in the AIDA fabric are bigger than you think. And if you're not careful, that knot will get created and it'll be beautiful. But if you pull at it funky, it'll just go right through the hole. That was supposed to be a bigger popping sound out of my mouth, but it wasn't. There it is. Spencer just did one. So instead, poke your needle very, very, very close to where you brought it up in the first place. Catch maybe a thread, maybe two. You want some thread, and I mean threads of the fabric itself, between your entry point and your exit point. And then you pull your needle through to the back. See, I haven't let go with my left hand. Trust the process, and you'll see, oh, hey, a little knot is beginning to form. So then what I like to do is let that loop happen around my left finger as I pull it tight. And you can see, I can kind of, will you zoom out a little, Spencer?
Sorry.
I can kind of do-si-do between my right hand on the slack of this that I've pulled through and my left hand. And that's kind of how you adjust your tension, okay? My tension's pretty good. Again, you don't want it tight, tight. You do want it secure. And as I pull with my right hand, it has to slip off my left finger. And I'm going slow so you can see. And there we have a beautiful French knot has formed. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because that one's really nice. I'm glad it worked out as nice as it did for my example one. Sometimes they just don't. It's true, even if you've done a million of them, like I have. So that is when you see a French knot in a cross stitch pattern, that is likely to be what it is looking for. The number of threads that you use, generally speaking, a French knot is twice around your needle, but you might adjust that. And this is where it gets tricky. There are, for purposes of stitch people, like I said, that's going to be what any traditional French knot is looking for. And if you do that for French knots all the time, every time, it's not going to be a bad thing. But French knots have 3 control mechanisms. Number 1, you have the number of threads that you are stitching with. I'm using 3. Number 2, you have the number of twists around your needle. Remember, we wrapped it around our needle. You could do that 3 times. You could do that 4 times. You could do it more than that. I don't know that I've ever felt the need to do more than that, but you could sure try. And the third mechanism is your tension. The 3 T's of French knots. 3 T's. These are the ways that you control French knots. And if you have these in mind as you're working, especially with Stitch People portraits, you can get some really fun curly looks going. So let's try another French knot. You know what? Should I review what I just did before I move on? Or do you think I can just do it? I'll move on. I trust that you guys got, because the process of doing the French knot is the same every time. It's just the number of threads you're using doing that French knot or the number of twists. In this case, I'll do 2 twists like I did before, 1, 2, but I'm going to keep the tension really loose. See that? I'm not pulling it tight. I'm going to keep it real loosey-goosey so that when I put my needle back very, very close to where I brought it up, not the same hole, and I have my thumb there this time, but I do have something to anchor this loop as it comes through. So then I can play with that tension. Like I mentioned earlier, I can do-si-do with my right hand pulling or my left hand resisting. Come on. There we go. And if I leave it a little bit on the loose side, hey, look at that. We've got a different style of curl going on. And yeah, I'll hold this in such a way that you can see them side by side. Oh, we're so zoomed in, it's having a hard time. There we go. So the only difference between these 2 French knots is the tension. Same number of threads, same number of twists. I just left the second one a little bit loose. And now it looks like she sort of got this free-flowing curl that's coming right up into her face. Now you'll see it's a little flappy. See, I can play with it. If you wanted to, you could secure that the direction that you want it to go. I'll show you what I mean. You can just bring your needle up and just kind of tack it into place so that it doesn't get flappy or get in her eyes. She needs to be able to see as she flies her broom on Halloween night. And now it's just a little bit tacked down up and out of her face. It is covering up our original French knot ever so slightly, but you can see there's a huge difference between these 2 knots. All we did was leave the second one a little bit looser. Now I'm going to do one more French knot up over here. I'm just filling out her bangs with French knots, basically. Because I imagine even if she has ringlety hair and you plop a hat on that, let's say her hair is kind of like in the front, like tucked back here, and then it comes down, right? These curls are all going to get kind of squished by that hat and be up close near her head. So I'm doing French knots for her bangs area, and then down below the hat, I'll do the Boolean stitches. So we did 2 twists, tight tension, 2 twists, loose tension. Now I'm going to do a 3 twists, 3 with like a medium tension. I'm not going to make it super loose, and I'm not going to pull it really tight. I'm going to keep it medium. I pulled it too tight. 3 twists with like a nice medium tension there. And you can adjust the tension up until your knot is done through that kind of push and pull between right hand, left hand situation that I'm about to engage with right now. So I'm gonna just kind of try to leave the tension where I had it, neither here nor there, not super tight, not super loose. And you'll see this one is a nice in-between size, but it does have a little bit more of a thicker quality to it. That's because there's one more twist. All right, so I hope that you can see that you've got a lot of options with French knots between the number of threads, the number of twists, and the tension, or what I like to call the 3 T's. Trademark Lizzie Bean 2022. I don't know if it is or not. I'm just saying it was just a joke. Okay, so now I'm going to fill out a few more French knots on this head. So I just did 3 twists, and this one's going to be a tight one just to play with because it's up near the hat. So it's going to get kind of tucked up under that hat. Really nice. And I'm kind of almost done filling out the space. I'll do one more tight French knot up by the original guy. 1, 2, oops, 1, 2. This is one of those reasons, if you saw what I just did, I did like 1, 2 and went to do it and it slipped right off my needle. This is why I like to hold the slack with my left hand, because I can give it some counter tension. See how I can pull back and away with my left hand as I manipulate my needle with my right hand. Sometimes that loop falls off my thingy. That's okay. Bam. Okay. I'm feeling good about how these French knots are coming together. Let's talk about the Boolean stitches. We have a question. Yay. I'm going to take a little sippy sip.
Alejandra asks, would you normally stitch across and then the French knot on top for hair, or just French knots?
Good question, because that's exactly what we did for Zombie Dude. He's a mummy, not a zombie. I'm sorry. Please, mummies, forgive me everywhere. For our mummy dude, we completely cross-stitched him, and then we added all these cool satin stitches is the word I'm looking for. And the reason we did that is so that the AIDA fabric, if we just jumped into satin stitching and straight stitching, there might be patchy areas where the AIDA fabric would show through and his form wouldn't be completely clear. And it also allowed the creative autonomy to leave some areas open. You can see cross stitches through here. So Alejandra asked this question. Thank you, Alejandra. This is something that I do, and I do recommend if it makes you more comfortable. If I'm doing a dog or a short curly hairstyle, I generally will always cross stitch first, just to give it the shape, to give it a foundation, to give it a base on which the curly texture can be added. Then anything showing through those curls side by side by side is going to be the right color. You're going to have a little elevation from the cross stitching. It's almost a couching effect for those who are familiar with that term. You've got cross stitching that's kind of elevating these, I'll show you my hands. I'm doing a lot of hands. You've got cross stitching that's elevating these French knots, and it can help. In this case, because these bangs, I mean, we're really only covering 1, 2, 3, 4 areas, 4 stitch areas of bangs, essentially, on the forehead. So I'm a little less concerned about anything showing underneath. And the curls, as you can see, like in the example of what the curls might end up looking like, they're going to be pretty higgledy-piggledy and wild. At least that's the look I'm going for my witch, is like wild curls. So if you want something that's a little more organized, a little more elegant, feel free to cross stitch first. Sometimes it helps too with real hair, and this I definitely do with straight hair or wavy hair, where I'm doing more straight stitches and satin stitches, is I will take my my needle and my floss, and I'll bring it up, and I will essentially, I'd put my needle here and I'd make an outline of straight stitches that shows where the hair needs to be. In this case, again, I'm just going for it because this curly hair is a little more wild, but if you have a specific shape you need to follow, try straight stitching an outline just to give yourself some visual guides, or pets, short hair, I do like a cross stitch foundation.
Question from Roxanne. When you're doing the French knots for hair, how many knots would you do per square on average?
On average?
That's a great question, Roxanne. You've got
1.5. I was just counting, that's all. We did a big one, 2 small ones, 3 small ones. Well, we did like an XL, an L, a medium, and 2 small. So we have 5 stitches in this area of 4 squares. It depends. It really depends. If you're doing looser French knots, looser curls, you could get away with less. If you need really, really tight ones, and like picture, I don't watch it, I'm so sorry, but Golden Girls, I'm picturing that tiny little grandma, the oldest of the 4, and she has that like tight white curly hair, very short. Her head of hair, I would do entirely tight French knots. You know what I mean? Just to give it that nice little compact little army helmet of curls. In that case, I would probably do like 1 to 2 tight little French knots per square on average. In this case, less so. Any more questions before a Boolean stitch? Okay, so for a Boolean stitch, this is a really fun stitch. It looks way more complicated than it is. Because you can see it looks like ringlets. It's really, really cool. It's, I'm just gonna explain it once. And if it confuses anybody, if a visual diagram would help, if I draw it out, let me know. I'm just gonna go for it and we'll see if it connects with you. Essentially, you're creating like a little track for yourself. So you bring your needle up where you want one of the ends, I will say either the top or bottom of your Boolean stitch. I like to work in, as you can see, I like to work in kind of, there we go, in chunks of Boolean stitches. None of them are too long. This one on the side is pretty long, but it's possible that I made that long one out of 2 halves. I could dissect that, I'm not sure. I tend to keep them more manageable sized and combine them, but you could try some really cool long ones if you want. So all this to say, you need to have the length of your curl in mind when you begin. So you bring up your needle and thread at point A, you put it in at point B. Again, I'm just gonna kind of go halfway down her face or her form rather. And you wanna bring that in, don't pull all the way. You wanna leave a loop. That loop, like I mentioned, the word track, that loop's kind of gonna be the track around which you create your stitch. So then you bring your needle back up at what is essentially point A here, and using the slack of this loop that you haven't pulled through, you twist. Round and round you go. And oh, see, I just let go and it untwisted. I'm going to give myself a little more slack. There we go. And as you twist, I want to encourage you to keep your twists flat. See if you can guide the floss threads to be in a side by side capacity, as opposed to like you want to avoid twisting like this as you twist around your needle. You want to make sure that the threads are pretty flat as you go, like so. And this, it's actually a little bit harder to go slower. So since I'm going slow for y'all, I'm just taking my time here. So we're just going to wrap the needle. You don't have to necessarily use 2 hands. Again, I'm just trying to make sure on this super zoom that things stay clear. And how many times do you twist it? Well, that's entirely dependent on how far apart I'm looking for my needle. I'm literally holding it right here. I just needed a pointer. Depending on how far apart your point A and point B is how many times you're going to twist. So I'm going to pull a little bit tighter, just so this is really flat around my needle. And I actually have probably a few too many twists by comparison. I have twists from this point on my needle all the way to up here, and I only need that many. I could squish them in, that's how you get kind of a thicker look, but I'm just going to undo one. Yeah, one will do. So now what I like to do with Boolean stitch is hold these little twisties on my needle in place with one hand, Generally, I'm using my right hand so that they stay at the tension that you expect them to, and then pull your needle through. Make sure that you hold at the base so that that tail of your floss doesn't come undone. And you'll see that those loops are going to feed themselves, like I mentioned, sort of around and around like a little track. And then I like to use, I haven't pulled tight yet. I'm using my needle just to kind of guide these twisties, especially this bottom one, if you're not careful, can be a little on the loose side. So just want to make sure he's in line. And then you pull tight and you can squish all these little twists up. And then you just tuck your needle in at the base. And you do it again. How cool is that? We have ourselves a little ringlet. And that's how you do them. Similarly to French knots, you can adjust the number of threads that you're using. Obviously, I'm using 3 threads here, so this is what it looks like if I had 4, 5, 6 threads threaded through my needle. That's going to be a much bigger curl. You can adjust the number of twists. If you under twist, meaning you don't have enough twists to sort of fill the length of the A to B point Boolean stitch, you're going to have sort of a snaky, thinner looking curl. It's not bad. Just know that that's what you're going to get. You might want that looser look. It's not such tight ringlets, right? If you add twists, if you sort of overpack the twists, it'll really just like almost like little poker chips, like how they just really squish together. That nice like cylindrical look of a nice thick ringlet is what you're going to get if you add more twists. You can also adjust the tension. I generally don't mess as much with tension on Boolean knots as I do, or Boolean stitches as I do with French knots, but it is an option.
They are also called Boolean knots, by the way.
There you go.
I was Googling it for Kimberly. She was like, "Are you saying Boolean like chicken Boolean?"
I think so.
It's spelled a little differently,
But I think it's pronounced the same.
but I think it's pronounced.
This is like the AIDA conundrum. For those of us who grew up in musical theater or opera, it's AIDA. But no. I think it's AIDA fabric, but sometimes it's easy to get confused.
Petra says it's much easier than I thought. I refused to try them because I was nervous. So nice job,
Petra?
Petra. Yeah.
A, very cool name. B, way to go you. See what I mean? It's a big bang for your buck stitch. Like, I bet a lot of you were like, what? Day 2, beginning embroidery and cross stitch, and we're already doing this? What? Yeah, no, it's not so bad. It is, and it's like I said in class number 1, everything is just a take, what are they called in music? It's like a prelude or like a little counterpoint to a straight stitch. In this case, we're just making a straight stitch. It's just taking a little detour and wrapping around our needle on the way. But it's kind of still just a straight stitch. You know what I mean? You get what I mean? Because if I pulled tight, this would just be a straight stitch. So before I pull tight, I poke my needle back through, we twist it on up. See what I mean? If you go a little faster, you can just kind of bam it out. Okay, and it's about as long as my A to B point. I'm holding those, you can kind of feel it as you go. I'm holding those twists with one hand. I'm not squeezing too tight with those fingers. I'm really just holding them in place, like almost like a little bookend. See what I mean about how sometimes this last loop can be a little on the loose side if you're not careful. So just take your time pulling it tight. If you give yourself some counter tension and pull, it'll get everything into place. And I'm going to just pull that nice and tight. And then tuck the end of this baby down in the bottom. How is that looking? Pretty cool, right? So in this case, I love on the pattern how these little curls kind of come out and like they just kind of like flip, like whoop. To create that effect, I'm going to do a Boolean stitch at a bit of an angle. So I'm going to come up here by the face. I'm going to do a stitch at a bit of an angle, say to here. I don't even think I used a hole in the AIDA fabric. It just stabbed right through. I'm still loving Petra's comment. That's like ringing in my head like, I refused until I realized it wasn't so bad. That's life though, man, right? Cross-stitching is just an allegory for all of the things in life that we put off that maybe aren't so bad. Sometimes it is so bad though. Not this though. Way to go. I'm so glad it's a little bit demystified for you. This one's a little longer than my other 2. So I just want to twist it a few more times. How's that looking? Okay, looks good to me. So just gonna hold it with my left hand, poke through, pull with my right hand, just a little give and take. I'm sort of feeding those little twists down my needle. If you have a needle where the eye is a bit thicker than the tip, it's not a straight needle, which I do think is what I'm dealing with here. You might have to work it a little bit. If you're feeling resistance, don't freak out. That's normal, especially if your needle is not perfectly straight, as many are not. If it comes out, actually, this is a good example. If it comes out as you're pulling and it looks a little bit loose like this, that's totally okay. Again, don't freak out. Trust that you did the steps right. You can use your needle as a tool and like scooch those twists down, and slowly but surely you'll see like, oh, I just need to keep pulling. You know what I mean? And you might see sometimes where in the process of doing this, some little twisties have crossed over one another. So like you could get in here and work at it and make sure that everything's laying parallel and there's no crossing over. It's not without its issues on occasion. That's okay. And you can see in this one is a little bit looser at the top than it is at the bottom, but that's okay. I'm just going to use my needle again as my guide. I'm going to move some of this slack down into the middle loopies, if you will. That's the technical term, loopies. Okay. I'll just give it one more good yank before I put it in here. And like I mentioned, I liked what I'm working for is this little flippy look. So I'm just going to put my needle in at the bottom of that stitch, and I'm going to do a French knot. I'm going to do a French knot kind of out and to the right, as though that ringlet is coming down and sort of splaying out at the bottom in a little curly defiance. So this one, I'm going to do a 3-twist French knot. I'm going to go back near to where I came up in the first place, and I'm going to do a looser tension, kind of like we did up in the bangs, and pull that, and there we go. Now I've given that Boolean stitch kind of a nice little flippy end, and I'm absolutely in love with how that is looking. Now, if you don't want to get too chunky around the neck, maybe the curls are kind of coming out, you could absolutely fill in some of this neck area with just a few straight stitches or cross stitches. Cross stitches would provide a little more movement. I'll do both so that you can see. So I'm doing just like we did on the mummy arms, where I'm using both the holes of the AIDA fabric and going in between the holes of the AIDA fabric for these parallel straight stitches, just building that up. I'm going to do this one at a little bit of an angle, less parallel, just to kind of give the hair some direction as I go. This next square over, like I mentioned, I'm going to do a legit cross stitch, just so you can see how a cross stitch in context of curly hair can provide some motion, especially if you purposefully make the diagonals go the quote unquote incorrect direction. If I went in opposition to the rest of my cross stitches here, that would draw the eye and give us a little bit more variety. I'm just going to fill in here with, I'm actually going to put a French knot here by what is ultimately kind of the chin, just to break up these Boolean stitches. I'm just, again, this is like, it's like a coloring book at this point, but instead of paper and black lines and crayons, I've got fabric and a predefined area on my pattern and floss. So trust you know how to color in the lines. I believe in you. And if you don't like something, cut it off, pick it out, you know, whatever.
Roxanne's got a question. She said, are you doing a 3 to 4 square jump for the Boolean stitch? Can it vary? Yeah, you can absolutely adjust the length. Like I mentioned before, I tend to do mine in smaller chunks at a time, just to maintain a little more control of them. But you can absolutely do really big, long ones. Make sure you have enough floss, and you can do short, little chunky ones. I'll do a little Boolean stitch. How about down here? I'll just do a little one. So like 1 square long, essentially. And I'm going to overstuff this one. What do I mean by that? That is Lizzie speak for the number of twists. Like,
there we go, number of twists. Like I said, if you sort of under twist, you don't put as many twists around your needle as the length is long. It'll be a little bit longer and skinnier. This one, I'm gonna over twist it. So this, I've done maybe like 4 squares long. This one's more like 2, but I'm gonna twist it up and I'll show you what happens. It will buckle in a fun way. Whoop.
By the way, Roxanne said, sorry for all the questions. She's super new to this, to which I say,
That's the point.
that's the whole point.
Yeah, never
Welcome.
be sorry for being a beginner. You should say you're welcome. You're welcome, world. I am learning and growing and trying something new. You're welcome for being curious and having questions and contributing to my family and community in a positive way. How's that for your affirmation? I love questions. If you don't have questions in the chat, I get a little bored of just hearing myself blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I've overstuffed this guy. I'm using my needle. I gotta adjust. I'm using my needle as a tool to scooch these twisties, and I'm pulling it tight. And what is happening? Well, because I overstuffed it, I'm gonna hold it at an angle. I built a bridge because it's literally, think of like one of those curvy Japanese bridges. Why are they shaped that way? Essentially, there are too many planks laying in parallel to go flat over the bridge. When you add more planks, they naturally are gonna buckle. Now I know that's the point and that's how they're literally designed, but that's kind of the physics there. So do you see how I've created like a little, it's like a little bridge, like a little caterpillar inching along, a little inchworm. So that's another way to add dimension. That's what happens when you overstuff. And that was a little bit of a shorter one. So we adjusted we didn't adjust threads, we adjusted the length, but we adjusted the twists on that one to give it a little bit more flow. And I've got a bit of a empty spot here. So I'm once again just going to put in sort of a medium tension 3 twist French knot just to fill her in there. Pull that tight and we get some nice motion in that ocean. Okay. I want it to sit right in there. Sometimes I make sure the knots go where I tell them to. Gosh dang it. You will sit in between those other knots and stitches and you will like it. Okay, great. So this is turning out really great. I actually like how this hair is turning out even better than the example portrait that I did. We've got 6 minutes left and I just want to talk a little bit about adding fine details. We essentially mostly finished this half of the hair. After class, I'm going to fill in. I have a little bit of a gap right here between the hair and the head. I'll probably do a little Boolean stitch there. I might add a couple more French knots just for frizz, and then I'll do the other side. For now, for the sake of time, I'm just going to tie this off so this thread isn't in my way. And I would like to talk about smaller details. What do I mean by small details? I mean anything you want it to mean. And I mean that. I want to encourage you to make this your own. So I just added like a little, I don't know, a little collar and like zipper or something. I don't know, a stripe across the top, like a tiny little bow, some eyebrows, a little wart. Feel free to really make this your own. If you want her to have a full striped hat, awesome. If you want to add sequins or beads, if you've got some of that lying around, super cool, super great. Love that for you. I want you to put your spin on it. If you love a glam witch, make her glam. If she's like a forest dwelling witch who lives in a tree or something and she's not glam at all, you can make her more plain. Fine by me. I'm using 1 thread of this dark green. This wart, by the way, is just a French knot. And when I do it, I will be using just 1 thread. That's a way that we adjust the size of the French knot. Using the number of threads, I will twist it twice and I will keep it very tight. And that's going to make it nice and compact and small. I'm going to add that after I add the lips, which are just straight stitches. But in this case, I'm going to pre-secure my floss on the back because I want to show you what some little details look like and how to accomplish them. This is like the cherry on top of things. Once you've finished your pattern, and we're almost done with this one, I'm going to add her eyebrows. I don't always do eyebrows on Stitch People portraits. It's funny that 2 of the characters on this one have it. Because they're both spooky, scary, I don't mind that their eyebrows look a little bit menacing, meaning, I mean, this is like cartoon 101, right? So if you have a smiley face and you've got these eyebrows, we look sympathetic. if you have a smiley face and you have like neutral eyebrows, we look neutral. And you want to be careful with the direction of your floss, because if you have that direction, we look angry now, right? But for the witch, that's what I'm going to do, is this shape, because again, she is menacing. I don't mind. But if you wanted to just do little slashes this direction and make her a friendly witch, by all means. I'm going to make her a little bit mysterious with these angry eyebrows. Are they? I'm just using the holes of the AIDA fabric. I've just got one little thread for my details, just like around the eyes. We just use one little thread. It is amazing what one simple little thread can do. And I just want to point that out, because sometimes, have you ever like painted a room in your house and you're like, I want it to be yellow. So you go buy like yellow paint at the store, and then your whole room looks like a Post-it note, when in fact, you maybe should have gotten like something that's technically called white, but it's a white with yellow tones, because by the time it's on all four walls in your room, there's a lot of that color and it's going to feel like a lot more, right? Hopefully that makes sense. In a similar way, you can get away with very fine details as long as there's good color contrast. Or if there isn't good color contrast, then maybe you use 2 threads or 3 threads. Just keep in mind the impact of the choices that you're making, especially as you customize. And again, I super encourage you to do so. But, you know, 1 thread here, but if it's not a very different color, might be a little more subtle than you want. Or maybe subtle is exactly what you're going for. It's up to you. There's no right or wrong. It's just something to keep in mind. I used a bit of a darker green here, and it stands out against the light green skin. And so 1 thread is all we need. And I do have enough time in my last 2 minutes. Even though I don't have the lips, I do know that my lips will go 1, 2, and up. So right here, I'm going to do a wart on her chin or lip or whatever this is. So we just bring our needle up. We've got 1 thread. I'm going to wrap it twice. I'm going to put it down very, very close to where I came up. And in this particular instance, I am making sure to grab a little bit of the existing stitching, because I need that for my knots success. I make sure to hang on to this loop if I can. There we go. As I pull tight, do-si-do, make that nice and tight. And that's it for my dark green details, but there we have it. And it sits right in. Oops, I almost lost it. Oh, I'm going to have to work on pulling it right up. You can kind of see it in there. It really, I pulled too tight and it sat right in there. If that happens to you, I'm actually going to show you a way that sometimes I fix this. If you're doing a French knot in what is essentially a hole of the AIDA fabric and it gets a little bit lost, even if you caught some threads on the way, you could either dig it out like I was thinking I might, or just pull really hard and like seal the deal, call it a day and do it again, which is what I'll do now. Sometimes, oh, but by doing I just pushed it back through. How funny is that? You never know what will happen. No, I don't have to do it again. And she has her wart again. This is why you want to catch those threads, because on the holes of the AIDA fabric, you just might get lost. So we are at the hour. That is all for today's class. We talked about French knots. We talked about the 3 T's. We talked about adding details and making sure the direction of your floss is good for what you're going for. Make sure to keep in color contrast and thickness in mind, and hopefully we've demystified French knots and Boolean knots. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to finish off her hair and details. We'll have her done. I'll post a photo, but please do follow along with us today. Again, it's Stitch People Day. We've got so many fun things going on, so many fun announcements. Discounts, not just from us, but from partners. DMC, who we teach this class with Michaels, has given us a bunch of stuff that we're giving away today. We've got some Instagram story games, and DMC is the best. So yeah, so thank you to DMC, thank you to Michaels. Come follow us. Have a happy Stitch People Day, and we'll see you next week as we stitch the vampire. Bye for now, everyone. We shall see you next time. Ta-ta.